of the body, we use one landmark as a starting point. And for the elbow, it's the olecranon process. Real easy, real prominent. It's a very nice tool to use for trigger point release. Okay. Olecranon fossa. Where's the olecranon fossa? Get there. There. See? Can't you see it, Dr.
X-ray.
What's the significance of the olecranon fossa?
Olecranon process.
Does the olecranon to go in?
Olecranon process.
The process to go in.
That's that end field.
Okay. Supracondylar ridge, medial and lateral. What's the significance of that? I heard of flexors, tendon, brachial. I heard a whole bunch of stuff.
It's the origin for brachioradialis.
I'm sorry?
It's the origin site for brachioradialis.
It's one aspect of it. Supracondylar ridge, yeah. Okay. So we have the supracondylar ridge, medial and lateral. Okay, you may have to tease out the biceps tendons for these. Okay, epicondyles. What's the significance of those? Flexor tendon, right? Lateral and medial. Okay, that is your landmark when you start to get to the flexors and extensors. And this is when people go crazy with those acronyms: ECRB, ECRU, FMLB, FMLA, FML. Yeah. All right, so the ulna, medial lateral. Oh, come on, that guy should have been automatic. It's medial. Shaft. Okay. Head of the ulna. And the styloid process. For these, I'm just burning right there. This should be very straightforward. Okay. Radius, medial lateral. Lateral, good. Head of the radius. Okay. Now, what's the significance of the head of the humor? Head of the radius. Annular ligament. Someone said dislocation. It's easy to dislocate there. What motion happens there? Pronation, supination. So, when you are having difficulty finding the radial head, you just passively pronate and supinate them. And you just feel for the annular ligament underneath. You should feel the radial head gliding underneath your finger, and his is right there. Okay. Someone who doesn't have a phone in front of them, let me borrow your hand. Come over here, Daniel. Because I want you to verify, am I on the radial head? So you put your thumb on top of mine, and I'm going to let go of my thumb. And then I'm going to pronate and supinate. Do you feel it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Gliding underneath your finger. Yeah. That's the radial head.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, thank you. Radial tuberosity.
Biceps.
Okay. What else is on the list? Radial shaft, that's easy. Radial styloid process, that's also easy. Right here, distal point, just proximal to the carpal bones. And Lister's tubercle. Everyone's looking at the slide now. What's the significance of Lister's tubercle?
I don't think we know.
You didn't go over that?
That's terminology.
Really?
Where is
Is there
that?
another name for that?
Then I'm gonna. If you guys haven't dissected it or looked at it, I may hold off on it.
What is
Because,
Is there a name for it?
What's that?
Is there a name for it?
No, I'm gonna hold off on that because I want you guys to appreciate it first. That's all. Okay. So for now, you can cross it off the list. Okay. So distal radioulnar joint. What motion happens there?
Pronation, supination.
Pronation, supination. So during pronation, with respect to the ulna, what happens during pronation?
Goes lateral.
It like everyone's doing this. The Macarena. Is everyone too young to know the Macarena? I was gonna say. I was like, that's the '90s. How young are you guys? What's this mean? With respect to
They cross over each other.
use your PT words.
Supinate to pronate.
They translate over.
Translate lateral. It's like the Matrix. Roll glide. Now you're just giving me upper dramatic. It does rotate. With respect to the ulna, it rotates over it. That's fine. That's fine to say that. Okay, and then during supine.
Clockwise or counterclockwise, is that rotates the anatomical position?
Yeah, you could also use medially, because again, in anatomical position, it rotates medial and superior to the.
That's a better way of doing it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for when I said use your PT words, but that's okay. Okay, radiocarpal joints.
A lot of them.
A lot of them. No, that was my next question. What motions happen there? And wrist flexion and extension. Remember, you have to be specific. Wrist flexion and extension, and radial and ulnar deviation. Okay. Carpal metacarpal joints. Now, this is an example of a saddle joint. Okay, and you can look up on the screen. Okay. At the carpal metacarpal joints, you have opposition. I consider opposition as part of reposition as well, because reposition is just coming back. Okay, opposition, flexion, extension, AB, adduction at the carpal metacarpal joints. Okay, MCP joints. Everyone's pointing at their knuckles.
Extension and flexion.
Yeah. Okay. And what else can happen there? ABAD. Dabs and pads, remember that? What does that mean? What? Can like that? See, I can relate to the younger crowd. Dabs and pads, what does that mean? Yes, but what about the D and the P part? There you go, dabs. Dorsal aspect, abduction. Palmar aspect, adduction. Dabs and pads. Okay. Excuse me, can I see? PIP joints. What happens there?
Flexion extension.
Flexion extension. And notice I'm not even palpating because that's just easy to say. Okay. And DIP joints? Good. Okay.
CMC, you know.
Carpal metacarpal.
Carpal bones. What acronyms did you use to actually identify the carpal?
So long to pinky, here comes some lovers. Try.
Wait, what? Say that again?
So long to pinky, here comes the thumb.
Ooh.
Okay, people. Yeah, okay.
Some lovers try because they cannot.
It's that.
Yeah, that's the one I've learned.
What?
Yeah, the some leverage try positions. Yeah. It's just easy to remember. That's all. Okay. So, where's scaphoid? Or scaphoid, however you pronounce it.
Right
Everyone's
there.
looking at the wrist again. Is it medial or lateral?
Lateral.
Lateral. Proximal or distal? Proximal. Okay, so that's your starting point. Okay, now these aren't easy to palpate on some people, but scaphoid or scaphoid, however you want to say it, is. What's the significance of the scaphoid? What's one significance of it? It's easy to fracture. It is easy to fracture. Low blood supply. And that's why it's easy to fracture, because it's also hard to heal. Oops, sorry, spit. What can happen there? That was part of my mouth. I was kind of hoping no one saw that. Yeah. So what's one injury that can happen at the scaphoid? Or scaphoid? But what kind of fracture?
Green stick.
It kind of rolls.
Green stick.
Boxer's fracture can happen at the scaphoid. Okay. Well, assuming that you're holding it correctly.
Does that break in half? What's a boxer?
Or it crushes.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you think about it, if you punch, and because all the force goes through your wrist, so that can actually affect the scaphoid.
If you end up hitting them more, you
So that's why I said it depends on how you move. Okay. Okay. So then from proximal row carpals from lateral to medial, scaphoid, lunate. I even forgot my first. Triquetrum and pisiform. What's the significance of the pisiform? Is there a significance?
The spine thingy-majiggy. You know when you apply pressure.
Yep. You can also use the hook of the hamate as well. Okay. I'm sorry? I thought you had a question. Wasn't it?
No, I'm just talking.
Oh, okay. Just talking to yourself. Okay. So then you have the trapezium, the capitate. Sorry, trapezium trapezoid. I don't know why it's crossed out there. Capitate and hamate. Okay, so those are your 8 carpal bones. Okay, so now with the ligaments, radiocollateral ligament, also known as LCL. Collateral ligament. So where does that go? From where to where? radius. Okay? So what motion will that check or prevent?
Varus force.
Does it check what valgus or varus stress? Varus stress.
It's lateral.
Which direction is valgus? Medial or lateral? Medial. Which direction is varus? Lateral. Good. So if you can imagine where the lateral collateral ligament is, or radial collateral, if a force tries to bend your elbow this way, that would check that force. Okay, so it checks varus force. Okay. How about the ulnar collateral ligament?
Valgus.
Okay. Now, where have we heard this a lot?
Tommy John.
Baseball.
Tommy John. Does everyone know what Tommy John is? Well, first of all, he was a baseball player. Well, for those of you who are not baseball fans, do you know what Tommy John refers to?
No.
Surgery.
Tommy John surgery. But what is that surgery?
It's a tear
Of the what? Tear of the UCL. Okay. And then they replace it. And then they're on the shelf for a while. Why? Well, first of all, who's prone to Tommy John surgery? Pitchers. Why?
So they have a larger carrying.
But why do they have a larger carrying angle? Excessive external rotation. This is when you really have to watch body mechanics, especially the mechanics of throwing. Okay? Because if you watch a pitcher, and I'm not a pitcher, but if you watch a pitcher, they bring the ball back. I'm right-handed. They bring the ball back, and then once they get to this point, okay, they maximally decelerate, and then they maximally accelerate at the shoulder. Okay? But then all the force continues down the arm. So what happens here as they start to go forwards? Their elbow comes back. Okay? So at this point, from here to here, where's the force going from? From my shoulder down to through the elbow, actually, to the hand, because that's where I release the ball. But from this point to this point, it's such a violent time of motion, okay? Rapid point of deceleration and acceleration, okay? So as this is still coming forward, the force is still being transmitted down my arm. So it looks, that's why pitchers' arms look like this.
Like a whip.
Yeah, pretty much. So if you ever watch pitching in slow motion, their arms, and I can't even bring my arm that far, their arms are like so far back here. Yeah, okay? What is checking or preventing that elbow from pretty much dislocating? UCL. Okay? So if you can imagine, repeatedly, and starting pitchers, how many pitches a game? 80 to 100, maybe more. Repeatedly doing that through a season, okay? You're not protecting that UCL. It starts to degrade and ultimately tear. Okay? So, and what's the significance of that to physical therapy? Well, especially if you work with athletes, you're going to work with someone who has a UCL tear. Okay? So you need to know what we can do to rehabilitate them such that A, promote healing of the new UCL, and B, alter their mechanics such that all the stress does not go through the UCL. Okay? So a little side note on the UCL. Olecranon bursa. Right there. Everyone see the diagram on the screen? Oh, now it's actually working. Yeah, it's very superficial. Okay, and it prevents pretty much irritation on the skin over the olecranon. Okay. Ulnar nerve. Can everyone palpate on themselves their ulnar nerve? Where can you palpate it on yourself? Cubital tunnel. Which is where? Part of what bone? Part of what bone? Yeah. Hence the name, right? Okay. Can everyone palpate on themselves? Yep. There's Alex. All right. There's that funny?
It's great.
Okay. And what's the significance of palpating the ulnar nerve at the cubital tunnel? Besides understanding how the funny bone works.
Cubital tunnel syndrome.
Cubital tunnel syndrome, exactly. Area of decreased sensation. It's also an area of restriction. It's an area where you can test, especially if they start to have numbness, tingling, any type of impaired sensation from the elbow distally. Okay, so if they're complaining about carpal tunnel, yes, you want to check the carpal tunnel area. You also want to check the cubital tunnel, because that could be a source of restrictions. Okay. All right, so we went over the biceps. You can skip that. Actually, you know what? Let's work on those. Let's work on bony and landmarks and ligaments before we go to muscles. All right, so work with your new partners.